Welcome to Goldfish on Games and Cover This Face Off XL, where we're flicking through the discs and CD from August of 1995, and those lucky covers include Amiga Format, CU Amiga, CD32 Gamer, the one for Amiga, Amiga Action and Amiga Power. Fight! And let's start with Amiga Action, that provided 2/3 of a complete game, in the form of Quick, the Thunder Rabbit. An interesting one here, as Amiga Action claimed that they reviewed this back in 1994, but then it was never released. They instead got a license for it, and were just sitting on it ready to release it at some point in the future. But if you look around, you can actually find images of its box art, so it must have got released somewhere. So maybe they were lying, or it's possible it was released on floppy disk outside of Britain, and we only got the CD32 release here and what Amiga Action provided. Now all of this is leading up to a platformer that was published by Titus. Thankfully it wasn't made by them, so it's actually not that bad. It's sort of what you get if you took Sonic and then crossed it with a Euro platformer, but got rid of all that collect 'em up nature. So it moves fast and you have a spin style attack, but the first baddie you meet can't even be defeated. So yeah, it really is a Euro platformer here, because they just have to mess with you right from the start. And even though you have health and a timer, that wasn't enough. There's also the carrot and water meters, that you guessed it, if they go to 0, you lose a life. You top these up by taking out the enemies and then hoping that they drop the items that you need to help out. Particularly when you get onto some of the later levels where you have a lot less water because it's a desert. Now on top of all this, there's also potions that you can make you run really fast or make you jump really high, which will definitely help with getting you to the exit, as that is really the main goal. Well, outside of finding the doorways that are in some of the maps, that will take you through time where you'll have to head up a map while avoiding the most annoying dino ever. And when you make it to that exit, what are you going to be greeted by? A bunny girl. Now this is a fast and mostly well done platformer. Graphically it looks lovely on a regular Amiga, even if at times it is held back a little by its controls, as the attack isn't as snappy as you might like. But it's funny that they called this the full game, as you can't actually finish it. You'll require the 3rd disc that they will be attaching to next month's magazine. So I'm not sure if that was meant to be an incentive to buy it or to avoid it. And what does trusty Amiga Format provide us across its 2 discs? Well, a whole lot of utilities and a single demo. And starting with those utils, we get Transition, that lets you convert various image formats from one to the other, like IFF to JPEG or even GIF. And depending on the output format, you might have other options like the quality or the number of colours. Useful if you want to use some of your images for backgrounds, or just need to convert some files for use with another program. It's not the fastest on a standard 7MHz Amiga, but if you use one of the faster machines it will be a little bit better. And this channel, well, we fully support any and all transitionings. Now after converting those files you might want to view them, and we have Fast View to the rescue here. If you can get it to work, that is. This supports looking at various different file formats including JPEG, which is quite cool, and can be used from the command line or just open directly, and it will let you select what files you want to look at. We also find a range of tools to help bridge the gap between Workbench 1.3 and later 2 or 3, which seems amazing that in 1995 there would still be people using their original Amiga 500s with the stock Kickstart and Workbench, and it was easier to get these tools than to go out and buy a newer version of Workbench. But we also have some additional tools like ARCalc, a far more powerful calculator than what came with Workbench, with more action types like trigonometry and pi, anding and oring values. There's even integration with AREC scripting, so you can work with it externally. It would have been a really useful programmer's tool back in the day. And finally we get LZX, a zip compression and decompression tool for the Amiga, Now it's command line driven, so you will need to read and understand the docs, with you using the right version based on what CPU you have, but this was becoming an increasingly important tool to have around. With LHA and zip files becoming far more common, you really needed something to restore it back to normal, or if you wanted to pass files around to your mates. And if you didn't want to mess around with the command line, then you could use programs like Directory Opus, as it would integrate with these quite nicely. And their demo was for Player Manager 2, a football management game that's gone with a distinctive pre-rendered look to its graphics. And in the demo we get to play as Wolverhampton. Now there isn't a whole lot we can do from this main menu, as most of it is locked out, with a note just telling you this is what you could be doing in the full version. Now it is fully icon driven, with you having to select bits of your office to get to the fixtures or the team organisation. Now as you can't do much with the physio or the coaching, all we can really do is just go and play a match, where it's obviously been inspired by the likes of FIFA and Sensible World of Soccer, as you can either watch a match or play it, and then you have multiple different viewing angles to see it from. Now the movement itself is a bit odd when playing, with some weird momentum and jerkiness going on. Now combined with the players wanting to hit specific points on the pitch, it doesn't come together to be a particularly great experience. But watching the matches is much nicer, as it does move a little bit quicker, but you can see the slowdown and the weird movement going on there as well. But because you're not controlling it, it is a little bit more acceptable. Now the demo is actually quite generous, giving you a whole season to play, even if you don't get to pick the team, which is much better than some of the football games that we've played in the past. Now by all reports this uses a modified version of the Kickoff 3 match engine, and I guess if you enjoyed that and wanted the more simulation side to it as well, then this would have been a good option. The surprisingly long-lived CD32 Gamer is up now, and let's see what they packed onto that CD. And we start off with some weird ones, like Dragon Duel.
Yeah.
That looks more like an example of what you can do with Interplay by Optronica. That was a multimedia application that let you design your own interactive bits of software. And this one starts off with a menu that, well, it's full of interesting sound effects. And then when we get to the main game, if you can call it that, we get a series of 3D rendered images and then a few animations that tie it all together. Now I'm not sure if this was actually meant to be a demo for a game called Dragon Duel, as eventually we do get some screenshots that look like, well, a Gauntlet style game, and some sprite sheets. But looking up the name, well, there was nothing with that ever came out, or ever reported anywhere else, and there's parts of this that look as if it could even be an adventure game. So I can only assume that they knocked this up to put something on the disc, as there was very little new this month for them to put on it. A theme continued with R3, The Art of Rocketry, which is an odd name for a shareware title. Now these normally get collected under their own menu, but this one got top billing. So they really must have been running low on titles, although this has been updated to have CD32 controller support. The actual game though is a form of Thrust, that you play in either single player or in multiplayer modes, with the one player version being a series of missions that you'll have to collect some cargo and return it to the base, with how much cargo you can collect dependent on the type of ship that you can afford. Now this all looks nice enough and moves well, but it will always be split screen, so when in single player it might show off your base or follow any missiles that you fire, as you are also armed and you'll have to defend yourself against other things that are around in these levels. And then you can use the money that you earn to buy better ships and try and increase your cargo or your weapon systems, or even how fast you move around. But also don't forget that you have both health and fuel, and if either get low, then you'll get a warning. It's a fun little shareware game. When we do get to the actual demos, we find one in the form of Bump and Burn. Now this was an attempt to make a kart racing game on the Amiga with all the kind of wacky characters that you'd expect, but using more of a more regular racing engine that you'd expect on the machine. So really it's a cross between Mario Kart and Lotus, if you will, as you can drive around picking up items in the form of stars that are on the ground, and then you can trigger them whenever you like. There's also this mechanic where you can ride up the side of some of the slope walls, so take that Mario Kart! The whole thing moves well enough, and it is neat being able to use the weapons, but it's not really pushing the CD32, as it's mostly the same game on the original Amiga from what I've seen, but it is quite fun to play. Now one thing I did find interesting is that when they provided this demo to CD32 Gamer, they must not have included any music, and it ends up trying to play whatever it finds on the CD, which for some reason sounds like the music from Little Devil. And something else that I wasn't able to figure out. Neither of those games are on the CD, so I'm not sure where these came from. And I don't know if they just whacked any music tracks they had lying around onto it just so it would work. But then this is also the same magazine that said that page 6 and 7 were for going over the CD and their contents, and instead they just dedicated that to a special on Vital Light instead. So I'm not sure they were putting their full and undivided attention into making this magazine. Nick Faldo's Golf, a demo that we've seen a few times on CD32 Gamer, but when you want a decent enough golf game that actually does utilise the power of the console, then well, you can't go too far wrong with this one.
You seem to be having a rough time.
But it is also a bit of a slim demo, as there is just a single hole to play. But then you will have enough time to find out if you really do enjoy this title, and if you get on with its very precise form of hitting the ball on that 3-hit meter, as it doesn't take much to hook or slice your shot, and doing so will almost always result in the caddy giving you his opinion on what happened. That more often than not for me is not a very good one.
It's about time you hit the green.
Now it's a golf game on a console, and that obviously means they had to have a cursor, which does give you a good idea of how much effort they put into making this port for the machine. It's also a game that expects you to know the stats for all of the clubs, and know roughly how much they're going to hit the ball. If you don't know that, well, you're gonna be guessing a lot, or just using the wrong club for most of the game.
Yes, 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 yes!
Jumping onto the PD and we get Escape 2.0. That starts off with a nicely done intro for a free game, and then opens up to be a maze-style escape game that, well, this is absolutely brutal. The first level has you dealing with a microscopic amount of time, if you can even read it at the top of the screen, and then gives you 3 destinations that you can teleport to right away. This isn't a title that eases you into it. No, this will crush you at the start, just to show you who is boss, as one route is there to tempt you with an extra life, but will not give you enough time to be able to actually collect it and then make it to the exit. Instead, you have to rush to trigger the buttons that will open the doors, and then run across the floor that will be falling away, and then stop dead after going through the portal, or you'll go straight into the spinning blades instead. Now this is very typical of PD games and a lot of early 8 and 16-bit titles, that they feel the need to start off with a hard level and then get harder as it goes. With a bit more care, they could have added a bunch of levels teaching you all the mechanics and everything you needed to learn first before dropping you into this sort of challenge, and I can only assume this continues as we get to level 2, as this is just pure trial and error. This could have been an absolutely amazing little puzzle game, but it's been completely wrecked by bad choices. Dragon Cave. So what happens when you make a fancy looking dungeon crawler game with that flick screen 3D view, and then decide that, well, maybe making a dungeon crawler is a bit too much work, and then decide that making a box-moving Sokoban style game might be a bit easier instead. As you need to move around those chests to fill in the gap in the blue area of the map, that will then open up the exit, with you pushing the chests with what looks like a bit of a shopping cart, or at least that's what it looks like to me when you can see the little image in the HUD. Now, while the graphics look fine and it does move quite quickly, you will end up spending far more of your time looking at that minimap in the HUD than the more impressive looking bit in the rest of the screen. As it's there that you'll see the layout, and it's there that you'll work out your route that you're going to need to take. Now, it's very clever for a free game, but the 3D view also feels a little superfluous. Bratwurst, an interesting multiplayer gravity game, where up to 4 people can play and fight against each other. Now, what makes this different, apart from the professional looking main menu, is that the graphics are all based on vector art. This means that when the craft fly away from each other, everything will scale down, so you'll always get to see everyone on screen at the same time. A cool gimmick that works quite nicely. Well, it would if it wasn't so difficult to play multiple ships at the same time using the same hands. But really, that's only a problem when you're trying to show off a multiplayer game without anyone to help out. Now, the ships are all classic designs that I think you can guess some of their sources. It's another neat little game. Now, as always, they've included a few scene demos, and this time they've all come from the Somewhere in Holland 1995 release party, with most, if not all of them, being the 40k challenge, and the one I picked to show off is Siesta, that included a number of cool effects. Oh look, who's next? It's CU Amiga. But across their 2 discs they have some utilities and a surprising demo for them. And it seems conversion was all the rage this month, as they've included a tool called Clarissa. And after the still images from Amiga Format, this one is for animations. And it can take the Anim5 format and then change it into the more efficient SSA one. That uses various tricks with the interleave mode to try and encode 2 frames into a single image. Now, if you don't have any depaint animations to hand, then there's a sample one that you can find on the second disc. Now, I managed to find an old animation that I made as a kid and loaded it in and converted it. And there's a few other operations that you can apply to it, like, well, color chaos, that makes it absolutely awful to watch. They've also got a player, so you can actually check out anything that you've done, and as always, there's the ability to script it with AREX. Now, after messing around with this a bit, I managed to save a whole 20 kilobytes of space when compressing down my animation. And their demo is for Super Street Fighter 2: The New Challengers. This at the time was a big deal for the Amiga, as it got a bit of a rough conversion of the original, and there were some high hopes that this might finally bring a good version of the game to the machine. Now, the demo is for the original Amiga, which, keeping in mind that this is effectively running on the same hardware that was released in 1985, which is why this animated intro is, well, it's a little bit slow. It is much nicer on the A1200, but when we get into the game, this is, well, it is better than the original port, I'll give it that. And in some places it does look much nicer, but in other areas it does feel like a bit of a downgrade. And while it doesn't move as quickly as I might have liked, it does feel so much better than that first port. Again, this is still playing on an Amiga 500 Plus. On the newer hardware it would have been better, but it also got its own dedicated version. So I think it's more interesting to see what this version of the game would have looked like on its original hardware. but I do find it quite interesting to see what a team of just 4 developers can do. Particularly when it's a group that only have this as their credits, at least when it comes to the Amiga, and it becomes slightly more impressive when you realise the console versions of the game had much larger teams and were given far more time to get it done. So while this might not have been your first choice of conversion to play, and it also wouldn't be your first choice of beat 'em up when it came to the Amiga, this is still the best version of Street Fighter 2 that was released for the machine. Now as a demo, it's fine. It's single player with you playing as Cammy against E Honda, which means you get to check out a new character to see what it's like, and you can compare against the old version with E Honda. Mavericks, the one for Amiga, is still hanging on, and this month they've provided an actual demo for Timekeepers. Now I have quite the soft spot for this game. It's a puzzle game in that lemming genre, in which you have to guide a bunch of timekeepers to the exit, but there are many traps and blockages along the way.
Platoon ready.
And being levels from later on in the game, the Vietnam ones, it's not the easiest that you're going to come across. And if you're not immediately on the ball, then you will almost instantly lose a couple of them, as well, there's traps right in front of them. Now the way you save them and also try and complete the game is by placing down arrows to redirect them, but they can also do other things like disarm traps and jump over obstacles. Now you'll be doing this to slowly make your way to the exit, hopefully leaving a path behind you that the others can then take once it's all been made safe. But every so often the route that the rest of the squad will take will be different to the scouts, as they might be using one-use paths. So this will always keep you thinking. Now it's not an easy game, and giving you the later levels in the game is a little bit mean if you ask me, particularly if this is the first time you played the title, but then the full game doesn't go all that easy on you either. And finally we have Amiga Power, that provided 2 discs with some PD, shareware and a demo. And we start off with Tennis Champs. That might seem a little familiar if you watch my Games Made with Blitz video. Now this is the original game, and the team made it using Amos. And after being checked out by Amiga Format, they pass it on to Amiga Power to be released, who also got Audiogenic involved, who asked for it to be redone in Blitz and expanded into Super Tennis Champs, which they then released. And you can clearly see the lineage between the games, with a very similar, if not identical, art style. Now you have the option of either playing an exhibition match or playing a whole tournament. And they also have 2-player options on top of all of that. In game, the characters move around quickly, as does the ball, and it does feel quite decent to play. I'm still useless at it, as I am with almost all sports games, but you can see the core of what would become the final title. And in some ways the history makes this far more interesting than the demo itself would be otherwise. But for those who do enjoy a good tennis game, this would have been great to have gotten for free. And again, it helps show how good Amos can be. The shareware title is Air Taxi, a take on the C64 game Space Taxi, where you have to collect passengers and then take them to the requested numbered area. The quicker you do this and the lighter the landing, the more cash you will get, which will be needed to refuel your taxi as you continue. Now after getting a few of them in the right place, you can then exit the level via the top of the screen. As you progress, you'll find things that will make the game much harder, with wind pushing you around, or people that will try and steal the cash from you. There's also smaller landing pads, and the layout of the levels will constantly be changing. This also supports a 5-player mode, with players zipping around all over the place, although they do recommend for some reason a 25MHz machine to do that. Which seems a bit odd, as this isn't exactly the most graphically challenging game we've ever seen, and the physics, well, they shouldn't be that difficult to run really, but I will say it does feel a little slow at times on a regular Amiga 500. But if you want to play it on a 1200, You'll then have to mess around with the early launch menu to disable some of the features of the CPU, which seems a bit weird for a game released in 1995. And the last demo for the episode is Gloom. And much like the other demos we've seen for this game, we get just a single level. But it is a reasonably custom one made for Amiga Power. Because look, it even has their logo as a texture. Now this is actually quite a technical feat for a game, as while the resolution isn't that high, and there's no visible weapons, it does run relatively well on a stock Amiga 1200. With some interesting effects going on as well, like these windows that tint everything behind it green. The level itself is mostly what you can expect from the full game. Wander around, take out the extreme number of cannon fodder style enemies, find the buttons that will then open up the exit. But along the way you will find the bouncing red balls that will increase your firepower. Later on you'll also find green ones that will change you to the next gun. There isn't any selection here, so the weapon system feels more like a shoot 'em up than a regular FPS, as really it's just different coloured weapons as you progress. Although if you manage to collect enough of the balls you will get the damage boost mode that might double the firepower that you can fire out for a limited amount of time. Now this game is not big or clever, but it is actually a lot of fun to play. Well, there we have it, possibly not the most amazing month we've ever looked at, but it is always interesting checking these out, as they end up being a bit of a time capsule for the state of the machine at the time. And we still managed to find a few interesting games that we checked out, and these were my top 3. In third place, Quick the Thunder Rabbit. As a free game, it's not actually that bad. Yeah, it has a few issues, but it's fast, colourful, and is relatively playable for a Titus game. In second place, I'm giving it to Gloom. It's more of a Wolf clone than a Doom one, but the choice of sticking with fast, quick gameplay and pulling off some interesting tricks does make it quite fun. And in first place, I had to go with Timekeepers. Any long-time viewer might have guessed this one, as I am a bit of a fan of this title. And if you had any of these magazines or you have anything to say about my ranking, then leave your thoughts in the comments. And before I sign off, I'd like to thank my amazing Patreons, who have been a huge help to the channel. And if you'd like to join them for free, they'll be linked in the description, and you can get to see your name on screen. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was a little bit of a mixed bag, and this was Goldfish on Games.